Hello, my wonderful watercolor students and subscribers. If you are a member of the monthly watercolor subscription, I have something very special this month. Yes, we experienced a little bit of a shipping delay in the US territory, but I am positive everything is on its way to you and it should go off without a glitch. Now, for those of you who have the upgraded subscriptions, you will be receiving an extra special packet this month, and that includes a printable for this negative painting that I did. And I'm excited about it because I think this is something we can add to our subscriptions every month, and stroke by stroke, we can improve the way we paint with that fresh, consistent practice and much inspiration and a little bit of gentle guidance. That's exactly what I aim for every single month in the monthly watercolor subscription. But this negative painting printable is going to be really fun to do. It's going to spark your imagination and grow your confidence. Not only that, but if you like them very much, I am making 4 additional ones available in the jackswatercolor.com store so that you can order more of them every single month for fresh new designs, as well as one delivered to you in the monthly watercolor subscription. All right, are we ready to start painting and exploring this new path of discovery? It's time to play, and it's time to have patience with yourself, because remember that all of your progress happens one stroke at a time. So never worry that you're not challenging yourself enough or that you're not painting enough. It's not a straight line. It's a path of discovery. And that's what we're on today. Let's get started. So this beautiful negative painting design is on 100% cotton watercolor paper. There are additional ones available at jackswatercolor.com that come with the paint if you are interested. You can go and check them out there. We're going to start with a wash of the yellow. I love this color. It is so beautiful. So from the monthly watercolor subscription, you got 6 colors. I did not send out gold because many of you already have the gold metallic that is available at Jack's Watercolor. If you don't have it, I suggest you consider getting that metallic. Although I can say that next month I'll be sending out a metallic in the watercolor subscription. So if you didn't receive a metallic in a previous subscription that you can pull from, you will be getting one in next month's watercolor subscription, just not the gold that I'm going to use at the end of this tutorial. So this is the yellow watercolor that comes with the monthly spring bouquet, and I love this color. It is so pretty. It's got like such a warmth and a glow to it. In mass tone, it gives you a little bit of a texture. If you water it down, it gives you that transparency. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of scrubbing in a base layer, because as we do all kinds of really fun techniques in here, you're going to want to see that mixing on paper. You're going to want to see this glow, this warmth behind the watercolor painting itself, and scrubbing in a layer of yellow is really a great way to accomplish it, especially if you're doing a lot of negative painting. Now, this is especially good if you're going to be using blue, because you're going to get like a level of green. If you're using pinks or reds, then you're going to get all of that nice mix, right? And that warmth is going to carry through. Now it's time to take more of that color and just start going through the painting, thinking about where the shadows are. Negative painting is a lot about shadows. It's kind of like you overall paint in the light or leave the light, but when you start adding layers, you're adding shadows. I think that's the best way to kind of wrap your head around negative painting and know that you're doing it correctly, and that you have kind of the concept down. Because if you're always looking for the light, in watercolor, we don't add light, we leave light. So if you're looking for the darks and you're painting the darks, leaving the next step of the light there, then you kind of develop an eye for it and a way for it, right? You develop that technique of painting in the shadows. So kind of imagine the light coming from one source, one side, and we're going to paint the opposite side of those leaves and those curves with the darker shade of the same yellow. That's what I love about this particular yellow, is that it does this really well. It has that darker tone to it in the mass tone, and a lot of yellows don't give you that. That really needs to happen here. So things like Azo yellow that I sell in the watercolor store, that's another great one that has like a more mass tone that has more color to it. Lemon wouldn't really work for this because lemon just kind of builds up and just gets brighter. You really do need that gold kind of yellow in order to pull off a shaded yellow. So what is negative painting in watercolor? It's a really good question. Negative painting is a beautiful and slightly magical technique in watercolor where you paint around the subject. So instead of painting the subject itself, in other words, the color, the main color or the light, you're painting the negative space. So you're defining the subject by painting the space around it. So in this case, my subject is the flower, and the underside of the flower, or the parts of the flower that aren't the light of the flower, that's what I'm painting, the negative space around it. And what's left is the light that shows the shape of the flower and the beauty of the flower. So by allowing the subject to appear by standing lighter and untouched as compared to the darker areas that you paint, that's what negative painting is. I want you to imagine painting the space between the leaves, the space between the flowers, and think of it as a background of texture, almost as if you're taking a picture, but your picture is on the portrait setting where it blurs the background. You want that space around the petals, around the leaves, to be that buildup of darker area and texture. The lighter shapes start to pop forward, and it's like carving a little light out of your shadows with your brush. It's really, really magical, and it's such a great technique to master. It does take some time, and if you're not really seeing it at first, that's okay. That happens to everybody. Just try to think about creating depth and dimension by layering darker colors around the shapes. Naturally, you're going to create that sense of depth. It does help if you mess up to remove some color, so you might want to have a clean brush on hand just to be able to remove a little color if you need to. Later on in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I remove color with an angular shader brush. And that really enhances the contrast. So don't worry about messing up. If you're using this month's monthly subscription, these are professional watercolors and they remove very, very easily. They're beautiful because they give you a tint. They can be built up. The color can be very flexibly used. And if you need to do a little bit of removal and scrubbing, they will respond to that because they're not ink. They don't have fillers. They are just beautiful, pure pigment in an organic binder. So right now I'm going to start adding some of the color. So this is the pinky color. It's a Mystic Pink. So Mystic Pink is part of my Mystic line, which is like a triple granulating color that has the ability to have like a lighter shade when it's watered down, and then a deeper, dark, richer granulating shade when it's in its mass tone. There are two of those in this watercolor set, Mystic Pink and Mystic Purple. Both are gorgeous. Another thing you're seeing me do often in my painting is mixing colors on paper. So I am grabbing a little bit of the yellow, I'm grabbing a little bit of the pink, and I'm mixing it together right on paper to get a different shade so that we create interest in the different flowers. Because remember, it's a spring bouquet, so we don't want everything to be the same. But by using some of the different shades in this color palette and mix them together, you can get all of those beautiful colors that are just uniquely yours because you're mixing them. So I would encourage you to mix the pink and the yellow together to get like more orangey tones, the pink and the purple together to just enjoy that. The pink and the blue together actually make a really, really nice pairing. There's so many different ways to use it, not only in just the single pigment color, but also by mixing the shades together and experimenting with your mixing palette. Now you can mix on any surface. I'm using just a silicone surface, but I often use glass, which really works out well, or a ceramic palette, which works out very, very well. Now remember, this first layer is always the lightest layer. I like to let them dry and that gives us kind of like that backwash on all of the different shades. So if we're going to build up the pinks or the oranges, you want to start with a nice little magical wash over the entire subject before you start putting in those shadows. Remember, negative painting is something that can become one of your favorite tools in creating light, flow, and drama in work. It gives that dimension so that you don't have that flatness. So I think that's why I really would love to use the monthly watercolor subscription to add a little more technique into your study, because negative painting can be used in so many different ways to add that layer of dimension to work that maybe you were feeling a little flat, and it's so easy to do once you get the concept. I think you're going to really surprise yourself. So I'm moving around the painting because as the layers dry, you can work those negative painting colors, which are the shadows. So in this case, we're not going behind the subject. We are still on the subject, but we're painting the areas of the petals that would be in shadow. And that is kind of like, if you study, this is where observation comes in so handy. Like, I literally walk around my neighborhood every single day and I notice the light both inside and outside, and I study how the light reflects on botanicals, because it's going to show you several things. One, it's going to show you that not everything is the same color, right? So if you're seeing something as pink, it probably is pink and wine and rose and like a grayish pink, or it's maybe like casting off a shadow from the room. Maybe some of the green is going on there. There's so many different shades of color in these flowers that if you really look hard and you look at the light as the light shifts and changes, it is going to show you something different every single time. So that's what we're looking for here, is as the layers dry, I'm going to amp up that color and use a little deeper shade of the color, or in some cases, maybe a different tinted shade of the color, slightly different, to reflect the shadow. And that's all we need to do, is just focus on the shadows. Remember, that first wash gives us the light. The second part gives us some of the shadows, and then we wait for it to dry and we go in again. And step by step, you will see this beautiful painting emerge. Always knowing that you don't need to fear, because this watercolor can be removed ever so slightly, layer by layer, on a good sheet of watercolor paper, which I've provided for you in this kit. So it doesn't really get any easier. I've set you up for success. You just have to play with it and enjoy. Also, don't forget that there are more pieces of watercolor paper, so you can always trace this design and put it on another sheet, or you can ink in a similar design using this as a guide on your sheets and go ahead and do it over and over again, even just a section of it over and over again. So now let's start to put in the green. Now remember, we have a wash of yellow, and what that does is that's going to give us different shades of green, because where the yellow is lighter, it's going to be one thing, and where the yellow is darker, it's going to reflect a little bit of a different light. And that kind of sets us up for this beautiful tone on tone, right? So I'm going through the leaves and I'm just kind of doing that light little shade, maybe adding a little bit of dark in some areas where I feel could be shadowed by the flower before it. This is where negative painting also comes in, because by shadowing some of the leaf, we're making the flower pop forward. And by painting outside of the leaf in the background, we're going to make the leaves pop forward. Now, it might not always appear that way. This is where you have to trust in the process, because that first or that second shade, that first layer, the second layer, it's not going to immediately make things pop, because we want to build it up. We don't want it looking all stark one color. And so by doing it a layer at a time and letting it dry, you're offering that transparency, right? Because if you just like put on a big bunch of heavy color, then it wouldn't show through. It wouldn't show the light before it. So we wouldn't see that yellow and that warmth popping through. In order to do that, we have to do it in light layers and build it up. And that gives you that sense of control as well in your negative painting. Because if you were just to dump it all on there, that's really fun and great to do, but you don't really have a lot of control. And at times you're gonna be like, wow, that's so heavy, I can't even see any of the luminosity, right? And I feel like really good paintings are part, with watercolor, are part luminous and part bold and part depth, right? And if you don't have the boldness, the luminosity, and the depth, which seems like counterintuitive a little bit, right? It seems like to get depth, it has to have coverage, but it doesn't. Or to get boldness, it has to have coverage, and you lose luminosity. That doesn't happen either. With really good watercolor, you should be able to build up layers, keeping that luminosity and keeping that beautiful transparency, but having that bold color at the same time. And that's what having really nice watercolor pigment will do for you for sure. So if you watch this far, I've done a little bit of everything for you just to kind of see that if you trust in the process, you're going to start seeing some really good results. And I really recommend that you watch this all the way through before you start painting, and then go back and paint along with me. Remember, progress is not a straight line here. It's a path of discovery, it's a path of play, and a lot of patience. You are doing more than you think every single time you pick up your brush. And I'm so proud of you, because if you've made it this far and you're part of the subscription, you are definitely committed to improving. And I love that you're here doing this with me. This journey has been amazing, and I'm so excited to keep doing it. Remember to keep going, keep experimenting, and remember, I'm here cheering you on every step of the way all the time, especially if you're receiving the month-to-month subscription, because obviously I'm sending you the paint and the designs. But overall, stroke by stroke, it gently builds over time. Improvement doesn't come all at once. It never does. The key is that consistency, the practice, the fresh inspiration, and that gentle guidance. I'm going to speed up the painting just a little bit here so that you can get an overview of what this looks like on the 4th and 5th layers. Basically, I am keeping an eye on those textures, right? I'm imagining the petals and all the little divots and things that you see in the texture of a petal. If you have a flower around, please take a really, really good look at it. Look at it in the light, because you're gonna see the light reflecting all these little tiny changes in the structure, and also the texture of the petals, of the leaves and the petals. That's basically what I'm trying to capture here. So it's not about getting one solid color, but at the same time, it's about joining the shapes as we enter the shadows so that it doesn't look sparse or too busy. Now, a lot of times on this step, and this is kind of a more advanced concept, but a lot of times on this final step of these final layers, if you have a very thin watercolor brush and you're just kind of like striking at it, and the color isn't connected, it kind of gets really busy looking. Do you know what I mean? So what we're going to try and do here is, when we do the darker shades and the shadows and we start building up the color, you want to kind of create little blocks of it that join so that the eye gets carried around the flower. So you can really see it right now on the middle flower, on the yellow. You can see how the deeper colors are kind of connected to each other in such a way where it's like a pattern. That really does help to move the eye and make it look less busy. This is the trust in the process area though. I'm just giving you a heads up, because I know right now it still looks like unfinished and we don't really know what it's going to look like. Oh my God, we still have a ways to go. So the greens are dry now. I'm going to start darkening up those colors just by moving around and just giving it a little bit of the deeper shade. Now remember, we're working with multiple shades here. So this isn't just the fern color. This is the fern mixed with some of the red, some of the different shades, some of the blue, so that I can kind of reflect different views of green. the idea, if you saw the whole overall concept at the end, is to have not just one shade of green, but multiple shades of green and lots of movement in the background. By playing with the mixtures and using the colors that we have in the palette to create different shades of greens and blues, it's really going to make this thing pop. I'm also building up some more of that yellow. So I'm just imagining like strikes of light, maybe more foliage behind this bouquet. Maybe it's got like in the background, we have more flowers that are kind of blurred. Whatever it is, I just want to add texture, because in the end, the texture and the boldness is what's going to make the flowers pop forward even more. And you're going to see that as these layers start building up and we start really getting somewhere with the texture. This is so fun to do, though. I can honestly say that once you get the hang of it, you're just going to get lost in the process and just enjoy painting those backgrounds and layering them. Always remember, too, you're going to be removing color. So you can build up these different shades and these layers, letting each layer dry, because then you can remove patterns and shapes and it will peel back one little layer of color at a time. And it'll look really super cool. Just wait till the end and you will be amazed. Always remember that there is a workable effort here between painting wet on wet and painting wet on dry. I try to do both as I'm moving through the background. In wet on wet, it's usually because I want to mix on paper. On wet on dry, I usually want to get some kind of striking, like I'm doing here with the yellow, some kind of striking design or pattern. And I can only do that if it's not wet when I lay the color down. I also want some of the yellow to build up and get like more texture. And this is a good yellow, like I said, to do that with, because the mass tone is slightly darker and looks more shadowy than the very diluted version of the yellow. And that's one of my favorite. It's like Azo yellow is like my favorite yellow ever. And this is very close to that. It's just so marvelous for botanical painting because it's not just yellow, right? It's yellow and gold at the same time, but it does everything that you want a warm, functioning yellow to do in watercolor. What you just saw me do there too is I dragged some of the color, and that helps me get texture. So I'm kind of going over a previously painted area and dragging color, and then I went and dipped my brush in. I'm mixing right there on paper, doing a little mixing on my palette, doing a little mixing and just grabbing some watercolor right out of the pans and just adding those layers with strikes. This is called mark making. I don't know if you're trained as an artist or you've taken classes before, but mark making is really fun because it gives you texture and it's perfect for backgrounds. So I'm in this area kind of keeping the top a little bit lighter as I work and the bottom right more shadowed because the light is coming from the top left. And that's what I'm kind of keeping in mind here as I design this. I want a lot of movement in that top too. And by mixing it with like taking the yellow wash and then the deeper shades of the yellow and then mixing the yellow with a little bit of the green and a little bit of the blue, I am going to end up with this really cool kind of watery shadow effect that makes all this design just pop forward with so much movement and so much interest. And it's really exciting. I can't wait for you to see the finished product. I mean, you probably already did see it in the beginning of this video, but still, it's just so neat to watch it come together. I can watch this over and over again. It's so fun to do and so fun to see. On this next layer of negative painting on the background, I'm taking a mixture of the green and the yellow together, and I am really creating those style lines. Now this is just kind of random, but I'm pushing the watercolor to make these lines, and I really want to build up the texture. Now you can see in the upper portion there's already some texture built up in one direction from the yellow, but now I'm kind of going over with a glaze of yellow and the green and also the green and the blue and just building it up to create even more texture. And this, I feel, just gives it this like, I don't know, it almost looks like sunbeams coming through in the background or like filtered light coming through. So To me, it's just artistic and creative and just something that I was seeing when I wanted to paint it. If you see a different background, by all means, do whatever makes you happy. You don't have to do this exact background to make me happy. You can do any background you like. So if you want to do this exact one, or you want to, strike out on your own and do a bunch of different backgrounds and do this painting over and over again, you're going to learn so much every time you do it. So I encourage you to strike out on your own and not only practice what I'm giving you here, but also mix it up and add some of your own techniques and some of your own styles that you've learned along the way into your negative painting. And that's what's going to make you into the artist that you are meant to be. So now that one of my flowers is dry, I think pretty much all of my flowers are dry, I'm now going in and adding drama. This is a build shade of the pink, and sometimes I'll mix it with a little bit of the purple just to give it a little bit more shadow. And what I'm imagining is the petals to be curved, right? Because petals aren't flat normally, they are curved. They kind of come from the center is the depth, and then as they come out, they hit the light, but then they curve around. And that's what I'm trying to reflect here by painting in that lovely shadow. I'm kind of going through the rest of them and just looking for spaces where I can make the light pop forward just by adding that negative painting effect. Now here's where the drama starts to really unfold. This is where we shadow the leaves. This is the ultimate negative painting because we are really darkening up some of those shadows so that the color or the shade of the leaf is going to pop out. Now obviously I have a pretty built up shade in the leaf itself because I want the flower to be bold, but I want the leaf to be bold as well. So in order to get dimension, we're going to have to go pretty built up in the layers behind the leaves. I also am adding some yellow just to even brighten up some of these areas in the upper left, and that's going to give us even more of like that reflected light. Now remember, I still am reminding you, build up the color because you're going to do some removal here in the end, which is going to really, really make everything pop. So build up the color, get those luminous layers in, keep it transparent. Don't build it up so much where it's just like heavy and, kind of like cakey. You just want that mixed with water and that really, really nice dried layer over layer over layer built up, so that when we do remove the color and we let some of that luminosity through and that light shine through, it just looks fabulous, right? This is, oh my gosh, I can't believe this painting is filled with so many techniques. I am so excited that we are doing this in the monthly subscription. So now it's time to start building up the layers on the petals of the flowers. Now, just when you thought we had it bold enough, nope, this goes even bolder. And this is why we want to let the layers dry and use a very, very bold professional watercolor that is not a dyed watercolor. Nothing that is so heavy that you can't remove it to, express that luminosity, and nothing that's too opaque where you lose all the details. It's very, very fun to paint like this, isn't it? I hope you guys are enjoying it because I really, really am enjoying how this one's turning out. I think this is actually one of the first paintings I've done with you that reflect more of my personal style and things that I like to do in painting. That is kind of a mix of, it's not necessarily loose, although I feel this is a very loose style in, overall. If I were going to do more photorealistic, I would do it differently than this. So to me, this is still a very loose style, even though I've got the ink design already in place. So now we are going to start really, really adding texture. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a darker shade of the green and just a little bit darker, and I'm working it into my brush, and I am drawing little kind of like stems and I would say stems, right? Like stalks and stems into the background just to add texture. I'm letting the color change as I go through the different areas of the watercolor painting. So you're going to see not just the same shade, but the key here is to do different shades. So sometimes you're going to add maybe a little bit of yellow, sometimes a little blue, sometimes a little green, sometimes you're just going to wash your brush out and let it strike through, because you want it not to look the same, and that's the goal. And then when you get down here, we're starting to build up more color, knowing that we're going to do a pattern on the removal in just a bit. Okay, so now that we have darkened up our background and we're adding some details here and there to different leaves or things that we think we need, I'm going to add a little bit of my green shade to the yellow, and I'm going to use that as a shadow color. Now we want to be careful with this because we don't want it to be too green and we don't want it to be everywhere. We just want to gingerly look at our flower and look for areas that would be the darkest area within the shadow. So if you have a shadow, you wouldn't want to paint the entire shadow necessarily. You would want to connect shadows, but at the same time leave a layer of the two different colors of the shadows, right? Does that make sense? So that the shadows are more than just one color as a shadow. And this gives us a lot of depth and dimension in the watercolor painting. It's something that you don't necessarily see when you look at a finished product, but that it's always there. We are always, as watercolor artists, using a color mixed with a main color, something like green, right? Which you wouldn't think would be the tinge, but like if you look at shadows, like right now, if you looked and you were in the sun or you were in a room and you held a flower up to a light, try to look at the shadows in your room. Like even a white shadow has gray in it or has green in it, right? And it usually has like either a pink cast, a green cast, a blue cast. It's cool or it's warm. That's what we're doing right here. We're actually adding that cast to the shadow. And by doing it with the same undertone, and this is going to blow your mind, by doing it with the same undertone, it actually gives you that cohesive look. So we still want to add the cast to the main color of the flower. So if you're painting a pink or a purple flower, you're going to add the cool cast to that actual flower color, just like we did with the yellow. We added the green cast to the yellow to come up with that last layer of shadow. I know it's really hard to describe actually, but it's something that will happen automatically, but the cohesiveness happens by adding the cast color to the actual color of your subject. Same thing goes with our orange. We're brightening up that orange. We're just adding that bold color. Now this is a good example, and I had mentioned this before, of how you can make a color more bold with the shadow instead of more gray, right? So like instead of adding like a cast of a gray, a cool or a warm tone to make the shadow, we're actually just building up a brighter, bolder bit of the color. I feel like that works really well with orange. Orange is one of those things that like if I were to gray it out, it would kind of look gross to me. I don't like it. So in order to keep it clean and keep it clear, I tend to just make the color more bold and go from like a light wash of like a yellow to a little bit more orange to a little more tint and a little more darker, bold orange. And that works out really, really well for orange specifically. On the purple, I'm just going to go from light pink shades to deeper purple shades with the Mystic Purple, and that's going to really help us get some of those details into this little flower bud at the top. Yeah, just mainly keep your eye on the light, make sure you know which way the light's going, and just kind of pull out those details that you feel will make one area of the flower popped, because you know this isn't a very big painting, so it's going to be really up to you to just kind of pick and choose your battles, leaving enough light there. So you don't want to color everything in, you just want to color in areas that are really effective, because it is a smaller painting and we just don't want it to be a mess. Okay, here's one of the funnest parts of my negative painting. This is the removal of color, where we start to see some of those layers come through. I'm taking a clean brush and I'm going to just do some leaf shapes just kind of random as I go around. As I remove the color, you're going to kind of see that, luminosity come back, and you're going to see why we built up so many layers. Now, the idea here is not to remove all of the color. You want a significant amount of the color to stay, but this is going to be where your creativity comes into play, because you're going to do a lot of pushing color around, removing color as you go. And what I do is I take the brush and I kind of push the color around, and that removes it. And it's a clean brush. And then I'm going and I'm rinsing it out, wiping it on a paper towel, and then just going back in and removing it. Now, if the color doesn't remove quickly, then your brush is not damp enough. It doesn't have to be sopping wet though, because if you get it sopping wet and you get an area too wet, it's going to watermark, which is also a good effect. So you can experiment with that if you'd like, and get it really, really wet and see the watermarks start to show. I want a more detailed look. I want that like kind of rubbed version of the flowers and the leaves in the background, so that you can kind of make out what they are. They're just blurry enough not to be like taking away from the main subject, but at the same time, they have some kind of continuity, some kind of actual purpose. And I feel like it just really popped and it really worked out. I love the way the background looks. You can see as we move into the upper sections and we deal with the yellow and the light greens that a little bit of scrubbing does really help, but this is where a good quality watercolor paper comes in. If you're doing this on a wood pulp paper or a really cheap thin paper, this kind of scrubbing is going to start working against you. You might lose some tuft on the paper, it might just not want to do it, and it might leave some streaking that you don't like. This all has to do with the quality of the watercolor, the brush you're using, and the quality of the paper. I would say the most important is the watercolor, the second most important is the paper, and the brush you can pretty much work around, Brushes are really good if they're good quality brushes, but at the same time, many of us use, especially at this level, a lot of the cheaper but good quality brushes, and they work just fine. This is also a good technique to use to add light back into your flowers. So as you start to see the final painting emerge, there are going to be some areas where you want to darken up for contrast, and then you want to maybe remove in some areas too to bring the light back in. I'm also doing a wash over on like this individual flower, and that's just to give it a little more pink, because I feel like it dried a little bit less pink and I wanted it to look a little more bold. So a lot of times I'll add the darker shade and then I'll take a wet brush and just kind of like swirl it around and give it that tint, knowing that I can go back and I can still add more depth or remove some color if I want to later. Ooh, now's my favorite part. So this is the part where I add a metallic. I did not mail out metallics in this watercolor subscription because I did not plan that far ahead on this, but you would have received some gold in a previous subscription if you were a regular subscriber, and I will send out the next one with some metallic as well. But hopefully you've got some of my watercolor in your arsenal and you've already bought the 24 karat metallic gold, which I did not offer in any of the subscriptions. You did have to buy that separately, but I just love the way it looks. You don't have to add gold. I personally just love to do it, and I wanted to show you here what it looks like with all of the gold details. So basically I'm kind of going over the line work on some, and I'm just kind of popping in the gold with my brush. I just love it, and I'm doing it on a whim. I'm doing it just for effect, and I feel like I just went nuts with it because I loved the way it looked. Yeah, I know I went a little crazy with the gold, but you know what? I just couldn't stop. It just looks so good. I ended up outlining most of the painting because I just felt like it was needing it, like it just kept speaking to me, let's just say, right? And as an artist, it is our goal and ambition to just be creative and let it flow. So if you're in the zone and you know what I mean, and you really want to add a serious amount of gold, go for it, because I'm just showing you right here that it looks great and it turned out fabulous. I actually think it looks better with the gold than without. I like it without, and that's like a whole different scenario, but I think just I love how different and unique it looks with the gold. I don't know. What do you think? Is it just me? Am I just gold crazy right now? I think maybe it is. I mean, seriously, look at how amazing the yellow flower looks with the gold outline. I feel like it just needed it. And then I did the centers of the pink flowers. They actually look good, and the center of the orange flower looks good. Just having like the little stamens done. I don't even know that I needed to outline or highlight the rest of them, but I'm pretty sure that I'm just going to end up doing it anyway because I can't help myself. Oh, this gold is so great to paint with. Okay, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm going to be doing one of these every single month until we get absolutely sick of it. I think they are so much fun. And don't forget, I will come up with 4 additional new designs on the website that you can buy from me with the watercolor included at jackswatercolor.com. Have a great one, you guys, and I hope you learned a lot of really fun new techniques that you're going to take on your journey with you and thank me for later. Have a great one. Bye.